is Wendy Murdoch, and I'm here at Hands on Harmony in DeWitt, Michigan. And Kathy Glue, my hostess, has made my century. I didn't know it, but she had a horse skeleton. And how many of you for years and years and years have said that you wanted a skeleton for Ned? Well, Ned's retired, but Neville's here, and so now we can look at the relationship of the horse's skeleton to the human skeleton. And the thing I want to talk about, which so many people don't understand, which to me is so important, is this idea of rib cage rotation. So the first thing you need to realize is that the shoulders are not attached to the rib cage by any bony attachment. That means that the chest can float between the pillars of the front legs. And so when we talk about riding a horse, we have to think about weight-bearing posture. And weight-bearing posture is where the horse can lift the back so he stabilizes the weight of the rider and takes the weight off the forehand. But in this case, I'm going to stabilize the front legs, and you can see that I can drop the rib cage relative to the shoulders, and now the horse is going to be on the forehand. And to balance himself, what he has to do is take his head and neck and raise it up and back to shift the weight of the 40-pound head back toward the center of mass so that he doesn't land on his nose. And then what we do is we say, oh, you're a bad horse, and I'm going to put a tie down on you, and I pull your head and neck back and in, and now I've really jammed this horse that's down and on the forehand. Because we haven't understood the fundamental issue of the horse coming into weight-bearing posture, which means that we need to show him how to lift his back relative to the pillars of the front legs. Now, when people talk about, the natural movement of the horse in the field will do this for brief periods of time, very brief, like a few minutes playing with their friends and rearing up and having a great time. But when we're riding the horse, he needs to be able to sustain that for long periods. So there's really nothing natural about the horse bearing weight with his back up for long periods. That's where we have to do proper training. We have to educate the horse and strengthen the muscles that are responsible for lifting the withers between the pillars of the front legs. And those muscles are going to be serratus ventralis and the pectoral muscles that have to contract so that the rib cage rises. These muscles take time to develop and strengthen so that the horse can bear the weight of the rider for long periods of time. So especially with your young horses, a long ride is going to be a bit harmful to that because they fatigue and then they drop the chest down and now they go on the forehand and then they have to raise the neck and then we try to shift them back and we wind up in trouble. You have to realize that when this rib cage drops between the pillars, we're putting a lot of pressure on the front feet on the ground, and we can wind up with lameness problems as a result also. But the one thing I can show so clearly with this skeleton that I've tried to explain to people forever is the fact that the horse can't really drop the shoulder. We talk about it as if the horse let the shoulder down, but the front leg, when the foot is on the ground, acts like a column or a pillar. What can happen, however, is that the rib cage can rotate relative to the shoulder blade. So now we see if I rotate this horse's rib cage to the right because he hasn't engaged the thoracic sling muscles that lift that side of the back of the chest, we now have the shoulder high and the ribs have rotated over, and the rider, if I put Neville on, Nancy, you want to hold Neville? Grab his torso, okay? So here we are sitting on the horse, and now the horse rotates his rib cage, and look what happened to the rider. That's right, but you went there.
I went there.
And that's what riders do, and the reason they don't fall off is because this leg clamps like crazy, right? And then they try to keep him over there. They try to adjust here, and then people say, my shoulders aren't level and I've collapsed in my rib cage. But the problem is that the horse has rotated the rib cage, and notice if I bring his rib cage up, all that goes away.
Cool.
So we have to understand the function. We can take him off for a second. The function of the horse and this idea that if he rotates his rib cage, meaning his withers are not pointing toward the sky, he's rotated down, that shoulder blade comes up, and now the weight is falling here and the horse is falling through the shoulder. And the foot is not being placed underneath it where he can lift up. So the foot is now angled and the horse is leaning and everybody's falling, and then we grab on the hand and we try to straighten the horse out, and there we go, the careen. The horse needs to be able to engage the thoracic sling and rise with the withers vertical, and then he can be straight and go around corners the way we want him to in weight-bearing posture. But this is something that has to be trained and strengthened, and if we do anything that starts causing ribcage rotation that creates that habit of falling this way and then pulling the nose around, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice because we keep taking the horse out of weight-bearing posture and keep loading the forehand. So I'm always looking at the horse, and this is where using the Surefoot pads is really interesting. sometimes when I put a surefoot pad under one front foot, we just see that the chest stays level. I'll get his head out of the way. The chest stays level, but the shoulder moves relative because I've put it on a 2-inch block. But in other cases, I'll put the foot on the pad and we see the horse rotate over because the shoulder is not free to move relative to the chest. And so this is one way you can use surefoot to kind of figure out what's going on with your horse in the front end here, is whether or not you watch the chest. I put the pad under and the next thing everything's rotating, or I put the pad under and it's straight. And ultimately we want that shoulder to be able to move relative to the chest, but we also need the chest to be able to move relative to the front leg. So that's just a really quick explanation with a fabulous horse skeleton we have here, and I'm so grateful to Kathy Glue that she brought this to me, and I'm just ecstatic. See you next time. Bye.